For privacy reasons, names and places have been changed. This story is inspired by true events.
On the morning of June 12, 2005, 41-year-old Dr. Benjamin Kelly, his wife Victoria, and their teenage son Jason set out into the vast wilderness of South Africa's Kruger National Park. The respected wildlife researcher and his family were conducting a routine study of endangered species behavior. They never returned to their lodge. Despite an extensive search operation involving helicopters, tracking teams, and hundreds of rangers combing through 7,500 square miles of untamed savanna, the Kelly family seemed to vanish into thin air. For 17 agonizing years, the mystery of their disappearance haunted the conservation community and left their colleagues searching for answers. Then, in 2022, deep in one of the park's most remote sectors, rangers made a chilling discovery that would unravel a web of corruption and reveal the dark truth behind what happened to the Kelly family. This is the complete investigation into their disappearance. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy this content, consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Now let's continue. In the vast expanse of South Africa's Kruger National Park, where the savanna stretches endlessly toward the horizon, the morning of June 15, 2005, began like any other. The rising sun cast long shadows across the acacia trees as Dr. Benjamin Kelly made his final satellite phone call to the Kruger rest camp. His voice carried the enthusiasm of a man deeply passionate about his work, detailing to the lodge staff his family's plans to document nocturnal behavior of black rhinos in the park's northern sector. Benjamin, his wife Victoria Lopez Kelly, and their 14-year-old son Jason had already spent 3 weeks in the park, methodically gathering data for their groundbreaking study on endangered species behavior patterns. Victoria, an acclaimed conservation photographer, had captured hundreds of images that would complement Benjamin's research, while young Jason, already showing signs of following in his parents' footsteps, maintained detailed field journals of their observations. That final morning, the family's satellite tracking beacon showed their position approximately 30 kilometers north of the Letaba rest camp, in one of the park's most remote regions. The area, known for its dense mopane woodlands and scattered water holes, had been carefully chosen for their research due to its high concentration of black rhino activity. Lodge staff later recalled Victoria's excitement when she described capturing remarkable footage of a mother rhino and her calf the previous evening. The Kellys were scheduled to return to Kruger by sunset. When darkness fell and their jeep hadn't appeared, concern began to ripple through the park staff. The family's research permits and safety protocols were impeccable. They never stayed out after dark without prior arrangement. By midnight, with no response to radio calls, park rangers initiated the first search patterns. Dawn revealed their campsite, a scene that would haunt investigators for years to come. 3 camping chairs stood arranged around a cold fire pit, coffee cups still perched on the folding table beside them. Their research equipment remained meticulously set up. Camera traps mounted on nearby trees, scientific instruments carefully arranged on a tarpaulin, and Victoria's professional cameras still positioned on their tripods. The family's tent stood undisturbed, sleeping bags neatly laid out inside. But the Kellys were gone. Their white Land Rover Defender, customized for wildlife research with specialized tracking equipment and reinforced wildlife protection bars, had vanished along with them. More disturbing still was the complete absence of tire tracks leading away from the camp, despite the recent rains that had left the ground soft and easily marked. As the morning progressed, a gathering of park rangers, police officials, and search and rescue teams transformed the remote research site into a hub of frantic activity. Helicopter sweeps crisscrossed the vast territory while ground teams combed the surrounding bush on foot. Radio calls echoed across park channels, each response bringing the same answer: no sign of the Kelly family. The discovery of Benjamin's research laptop in their tent provided the last known moments of the family's presence. The final entry, time-stamped at 10:43 a.m. on that fateful morning, contained a curious note. Unusual vehicle act. Ivity near Western Waterhole. V getting photos. Must investigate further. The words would later prove prophetic, but in those early hours, they only deepened the mystery. As day turned to night, the search teams faced the harsh reality of the African wilderness. In a park spanning nearly 2 million hectares, inhabited by some of the continent's most dangerous predators, the chances of finding the family diminished with each passing hour. The vastness of Kruger, once a source of wonder for the Kelly family, had become an impenetrable void that swallowed their last traces. Local trackers, renowned for their ability to read the subtlest signs in the landscape, found themselves puzzled by the complete lack of human trails leading from the camp. It was as if the family had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a perfectly preserved snapshot of their final morning in the bush. The only clue to their departure lay in that last laptop entry, an investigation that would ultimately lead to their fate, though this truth would remain hidden in the African soil for 17 long years. The initial investigation into the Kelly family's disappearance quickly evolved from a search and rescue operation into something far more complex. Colonel Sifo Ndaba of the South African Police Service arrived at the campsite on the third day, his weathered face betraying concern as he surveyed the untouched research equipment. In his 23 years of service, he had never encountered a disappearance that left so many questions unanswered. The research equipment told its own story. Victoria's cameras contained hundreds of photos from their expedition, the last image captured at 10:37 a.m. on the day they vanished, a distant shot of what appeared to be tire tracks near the Western Waterhole. The quality was too poor to yield any definitive evidence, but it corresponded with Benjamin's final laptop entry about unusual vehicle activity. Lodge staff interviews painted a picture of a meticulous family who never took unnecessary risks. Maria Venter, the head receptionist at Skuku's arrest camp, recalled her last interaction with Victoria 2 days before their disappearance. She was so excited about their findings, Maria remembered. She spoke about wanting to extend their permit for another week to gather more data. This wasn't a family planning to leave suddenly. The investigation team faced unprecedented challenges. Heavy rains had swept through the region the night after the Kellys vanished, washing away potential tracks and scents that could have aided search dogs. Helicopter sweeps covered ever-widening circles from the campsite, but the dense, mopping woodland canopy obscured ground visibility. Each day brought fresh complications as wildlife moved through the search area, disturbing any remaining physical evidence. What troubled Colonel Ndaba most was the precision of the scene. Nothing appeared rushed or disturbed. The family's passports remained in their document case. Their satellite phone lay charging on the solar panel. Even the morning's breakfast dishes had been washed and stored properly in their camping kit. This level of orderliness contradicted any theory of a sudden flight from danger. Dr. Rachel Thompson, brought in as a wildlife crime consultant, noted peculiarities in the research data. The Kellys' GPS tracking logs showed systematic movements around known rhino territories, but with unexpected gaps in the timeline. Several hours of recordings were missing from the days leading up to their disappearance. Whether this represented equipment failure or deliberate deletion remained unclear. As the first week stretched into the second, darker theories emerged. Mark Davidson, head of the park's anti-poaching unit, discovered that the Kellys' research permit applications had been processed through unusual channels. The standard verification procedures showed irregularities, with final approval granted by senior park management despite initial rejections at lower levels. The investigation's scope widened beyond the park's boundaries. International agencies were notified, but the lack of ransom demands or border crossing reports suggested the family remained within Kruger's vast expanse. Colonel Ndaba's team interviewed every park employee who had contact with the Kellys, yet each conversation yielded more questions than answers. By the end of the first month, the investigation had compiled a troubling collection of disconnected details. A park ranger reported unusual radio interference in the area during the week of the disappearance. A tourist's photograph showed an unidentified vehicle in the background of a landscape shot, taken near the Kellys' research zone. Local communities spoke of increased helicopter activity in the weeks before the family vanished. These fragments painted a picture of something more sinister than a tragic accident or animal encounter. Colonel Ndaba's preliminary report highlighted the possibility of foul play, but without physical evidence or bodies, the case remained frustratingly opaque. The Kellys' empty campsite stood as a testament to one of Kruger's most baffling mysteries. While somewhere in the vast African wilderness, their Land Rover and the truth about their fate lay hidden, waiting to be discovered. As weeks turned to months, the disappearance of the Kelly family settled into an uncomfortable silence across Kruger National Park. The intense initial search efforts gradually dwindled, leaving only periodic helicopter sweeps and the dedicated but increasingly frustrated work of Colonel Ndaba's investigative team. The case that had once dominated international headlines began to slip from public consciousness, becoming another unsolved mystery in the vast African wilderness. Dr. Rachel Thompson, who had devoted herself to analyzing the fragmentary evidence, refused to let the case fade away. She established a small office at Skukuza, walls covered with maps marking the family's last known movements and photographs of their abandoned campsite. Her preliminary theory, that the Kellys had stumbled upon something they weren't meant to see, gained traction among certain park officials, but remained frustratingly unprovable. The first anniversary of the disappearance brought renewed media attention. Colleagues from Cambridge University, where Benjamin had been a respected researcher, organized a memorial service that highlighted his contributions to wildlife conservation. Victoria's photographs from their final expedition were exhibited in galleries across Europe and America, their haunting beauty drawing attention to both the family's work and their mysterious fate. Yet despite the continued interest, solid leads remained elusive. The heavy rains that had hampered the initial investigation had also erased countless potential clues. Each passing season transformed the landscape further, as the African bush reclaimed the areas where search teams had once combed for evidence. The Kellys' campsite, initially preserved for investigation, was eventually dismantled, though photographs and detailed documentation remained in the case files. By 2010, 5 years after the disappearance, the investigation had reached a virtual standstill. Colonel Ndaba, though officially keeping the case open, had been forced to redirect resources to more current crimes. The annual reports grew thinner, consisting mainly of routine checks of border crossings and reviews of similar cases across southern Africa. Jason Kelly's 18th birthday in 2009 passed with a painful milestone. He had now been missing longer than he had been alive. His school friends in Cambridge organized an annual conservation award in his name, ensuring that the young aspiring scientist's memory would inspire future generations of researchers. The case periodically sparked new interest when similar incidents occurred in other African parks, but none shared the peculiar circumstances of the Kellys' disappearance. Their satellite phone never registered another signal. Their bank accounts remained untouched. Their Land Rover's distinctive registration number never appeared on any border-crossing manifest. Dr. Thompson continued her work, though increasingly alone in her dedication. She developed a comprehensive theory involving the family's research locations and known poaching routes, but without physical evidence, it remained speculation. Her yearly reports to park management grew more pointed, suggesting that the truth lay not in the vast expanse of the park, but in the human systems meant to protect it. Mark Davidson, from his position in anti-poaching operations, noted a disturbing pattern in the years following the disappearance. The areas where the Kellys had conducted their research saw a significant increase in rhino deaths, yet official reports showed no unusual activity. The discrepancy nagged at him, but proving a connection to events from years earlier proved impossible. By 2015, a decade after the family vanished, the case had become a cautionary tale told to new park rangers during their training. The message was clear. Even the most experienced researchers could fall victim to the unpredictable dangers of the African bush. Yet those who knew the details remained unconvinced by this simplified narrative. The years rolled on, and the mystery of the Kelly family settled into park folklore. Their story became intertwined with the larger narrative of Kruger's struggles with poaching and conservation. Victoria's photographs continued to appear in wildlife magazines, their power undiminished by time. Benjamin's research papers were still cited in academic journals, his observations proving prescient as rhino populations faced mounting pressures. For 17 years, the truth lay buried in the African soil, as hidden as the family's fate. The case seemed destined to remain one of Africa's unsolved mysteries until 2022, when new technology and old evidence would finally begin to unravel the complex web of events that led to their disappearance. In January 2022, as dawn broke over Kruger National Park, a team of geophysicists moved methodically across a remote section of the Northern Territory. Their ground-penetrating radar equipment, acquired through a new anti-poaching initiative, swept back and forth across the Earth, searching for anomalies that might reveal hidden caches of weapons or poaching supplies. Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead geophysicist, almost dismissed the first unusual reading as natural geological formation. The signature, however, was too uniform, too artificial to ignore. Approximately 2 meters beneath the sun-baked soil, something large and distinctly metallic lay buried. The excavation began cautiously the following morning. As layers of earth were carefully removed, the unmistakable white roof of a Land Rover Defender gradually emerged from its 17-year tomb. The vehicle's distinctive research modification bars, though corroded, were immediately recognizable to the veteran park rangers present. After nearly 2 decades, the Kelly family's vehicle had finally been found. The discovery site lay less than 8 kilometers from their original campsite, cleverly concealed in a natural depression that had since grown over with dense vegetation. The burial had been expertly planned deep enough to avoid detection, yet shallow enough to avoid the underground water table that would have caused rapid deterioration. Forensic teams worked meticulously over the next week, documenting every detail as they excavated the vehicle. Inside, they found 3 sets of skeletal remains. Personal effects confirmed what everyone already suspected: the Kelly family had never left the park. Victoria's camera, though severely damaged, was recovered from beneath the driver's seat. In the back, Jason's backpack still contained his field journal, its pages preserved in a waterproof case. But the most significant discovery lay hidden in a false compartment beneath the vehicle's floor panels. Dr. Benjamin Kelly's research notes, sealed in waterproof containers, told a story far more disturbing than anyone had imagined. The papers detailed systematic poaching operations within the park, complete with dates, locations, and most crucially, names. Benjamin had documented everything, including photographs and coordinate readings that implicated senior park officials in an international rhino horn trafficking network. The final pages of his notes, dated the morning of their disappearance, revealed that the family had witnessed a poaching operation in progress. Benjamin's last entry described their plan to drive to the nearest ranger station to report what they had seen. They never made it. Colonel Ndaba, now nearing retirement, arrived at the excavation site within hours of the remains being discovered. The weathered police officer stood silently as forensics teams cataloged years of evidence emerging from the African soil. The truth he had sought for so long was finally surfacing, but the revelation brought no joy, only a grim determination to bring the perpetrators to justice. Dr. Rachel Thompson's years of theoretical work suddenly found tragic validation. The locations marked in Benjamin's recovered notes aligned perfectly with her mapped patterns of poaching activities. The family hadn't simply disappeared, they had been silenced after tumbling upon a criminal enterprise that reached into the highest levels of park management. Mark Davidson, examining the recovered documents, found his worst suspicions confirmed. The unusual radio interference reported around the time of the disappearance coincided with unauthorized helicopter movements noted in Benjamin's records. The pieces of the puzzle, scattered across 17 years, began falling into place. The Land Rover's discovery sparked an immediate expansion of the investigation. As news spread through park channels, the atmosphere among staff shifted palpably. Old fears resurfaced, and long-held suspicions found voice. The carefully maintained silence surrounding the Kelly family's fate began to crack. For Colonel Ndaba and his team, the real work was just beginning. Benjamin's preserved notes provided not just evidence of what had happened to his family, but a detailed blueprint of corruption within the park system. The dead had finally spoken, and their testimony would shake Kruger National Park to its foundations. The White Land Rover, after nearly 2 decades beneath the earth, had yielded its grim secrets. As the African sun set on the excavation site, the first arrests were already being planned. The truth about the Kelly family's fate would prove to be more tragic and more significant than anyone had imagined during those long years of searching. In the aftermath of the Land Rover's discovery, a specialized task force assembled at Skukuza headquarters, transforming a conference room into a war room of evidence and analysis. Dr. Rachel Thompson, her years of theoretical work suddenly validated, led the forensic examination of Benjamin Kelly's recovered notes, each page revealing deeper layers of corruption within Kruger's management structure. The documents painted a devastating picture. Benjamin had meticulously documented suspicious helicopter flights, unauthorized vehicle movements, and systematic patterns of rhino killings that corresponded perfectly with staff rotation schedules. His notes included photographs, GPS coordinates, and most crucially, names among them: Park Warden Thabo Mthembu, whose signature appeared repeatedly on irregular permits and patrol schedules. Mark Davidson's anti-poaching expertise proved invaluable as the team mapped the network's operations. The patterns were clear. Certain areas of the park had been deliberately left vulnerable during specific time windows, allowing poaching teams to operate with virtual impunity. Radio logs from those periods showed consistent gaps in coverage, too regular to be coincidental. Colonel Ndaba, working closely with Thompson and Davidson, began connecting the recovered evidence to cold cases from the past 17 years. Numerous unsolved poaching incidents aligned perfectly with the dates and locations in Benjamin's notes. The family had unknowingly documented the early stages of what would become one of Africa's largest rhino horn trafficking operations. The investigation revealed how deeply the corruption had penetrated park management. Mthembu's position as senior warden had allowed him to manipulate patrol schedules, creating strategic blind spots for poaching teams to exploit. His careful orchestration had generated millions in illegal profits while maintaining a facade of legitimate conservation work. As the task force delved deeper, they discovered that the Kelly family's research permit applications had been deliberately routed through Mthembu's office. Their intended study areas had overlapped with established poaching corridors, making their presence an unexpected threat to the operation. Benjamin's detailed observations and Victoria's professional photography equipment had posed a particular risk to the syndicate's activities. The recovered documents revealed how the family had gradually pieced together the truth. Benjamin's notes showed increasing awareness of suspicious patterns in ranger movements and unexplained vehicle tracks. Victoria's photographs, though severely damaged, included images of unauthorized vehicles and equipment cached in remote locations. Even young Jason's field journal contained sketches of helicopter landing sites that shouldn't have existed. Dr. Thompson's analysis of the family's final days became particularly crucial. The timing of their disappearance coincided with a planned major poaching operation, documented in Benjamin's last entries. The family had unwittingly stumbled upon preparations for the largest rhino horn extraction ever attempted in the park's history. Financial investigators, brought in to follow the money trail, uncovered a complex web of offshore accounts and shell companies. Mthembu's modest warden salary belied a hidden fortune, carefully concealed through a network of international transactions. The corruption had made him wealthy, but it had also made him vulnerable to discovery. As evidence mounted, the task force began to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. The systematic poaching operation had claimed hundreds of rhinos over the years, but its most heinous crime had been the murder of a family whose only offense was their dedication to wildlife conservation. The Kelly family had died because they believed in the importance of their work, and because they had been too skilled, too observant, and too honest to ignore what they had discovered. The investigation's findings painted a tragic portrait of the family's final hours. They had attempted to reach the nearest ranger station to report their discoveries, unaware that their route had been deliberately intercepted. The careful burial of their vehicle, the preservation of Benjamin's notes, and the execution-style nature of their deaths all pointed to a carefully planned operation to silence them permanently. Mark Davidson's team began identifying other potential witnesses and victims. Several unexplained resignations and transfers from the park over the years suddenly took on new significance. The conspiracy had not only claimed the Kelly family, but had also systematically removed or silenced anyone who might have exposed its operations. As the evidence against Mthembu mounted, the task force prepared for the most significant anti-poaching operation in Kruger's history. The warden's arrest would need to be coordinated with simultaneous raids across multiple locations to prevent the destruction of evidence or the escape of other syndicate members. The legacy of the Kelly family's sacrifice would be the complete dismantling of the corruption they had died trying to expose. On a humid morning in March 2022, Colonel Saifo Ndaba stood before a gathering of elite police units at a secure facility outside Kruger National Park. The evidence compiled against Thabo Mthembu had reached critical mass, transforming 17 years of suspicion into actionable intelligence. The morning's operation would require precise coordination across 12 locations, targeting not just the corrupt warden but the entire network he had built. Dawn had barely broken when the first teams moved into position. Mthembu's daily routine was predictable. He always arrived at his office by 6, reviewing patrol schedules before his staff arrived. Today, however, he found Colonel Ndaba waiting in his chair, Benjamin Kelly's recovered notebook spread across his desk. The arrest itself was anticlimactic. Mthembu offered no resistance, his composed demeanor cracking only when shown the photographs recovered from the buried Land Rover. The images he had thought lost forever had survived, preserved in their waterproof cases. Clear shots of helicopter landings, vehicle tracks, and most damaging, Mthembu himself directing operations at known poaching sites. During the initial interrogation, Dr. Rachel Thompson observed from behind mirrored glass as Mthembu's carefully constructed world unraveled. The evidence was overwhelming. Benjamin's notes detailed not just the poaching operations, but the entire organizational structure. The family had documented everything: dates, locations, vehicle registrations, and banking details hidden in encrypted files on their recovered laptop. The truth of the Kelly family's final hours emerged through Mthembu's confession. They had indeed witnessed preparations for a major poaching operation that morning in 2005. Victoria's cameras had captured crucial evidence, while Benjamin's detailed notes threatened to expose the entire network. The family's attempt to reach the nearest ranger station had been intercepted by Mthembu himself, leading to their execution and the careful concealment of their vehicle. Simultaneous raids across the park yielded additional evidence. Hidden stockpiles of weapons and poaching equipment were discovered in locations exactly matching Benjamin's documented coordinates. Financial records revealed a complex money laundering operation that had processed millions in illegal LD Life products. The corruption reached beyond the park, implicating customs officials, transportation companies, and even political figures. The investigation revealed how Mthembu had orchestrated the cover-up. His position had allowed him to control the initial search areas, deliberately directing teams away from the burial site. He had manipulated patrol schedules, created false reports, and systematically removed anyone who asked too many questions. For 17 years, he had maintained his facade as a dedicated conservationist while facilitating the slaughter of the very animals he was sworn to protect. Mark Davidson's anti-poaching unit discovered the full extent of the operation's impact. Over 800 rhinos had been killed under Mthembu's coordination. The careful planning, the strategic timing, and the professional execution of each poaching operation revealed a level of organization that could only have succeeded with inside help. As night fell on the day of the arrests, Colonel Ndaba returned to the site where the Kellys' Land Rover had been discovered. The family had died trying to protect the wildlife they loved, their dedication to truth ultimately exposing one of Africa's largest poaching networks. Their careful documentation, preserved through 17 years of burial, had finally brought justice to the surface. The evidence gathered from the Kelly family's recovered possessions proved insurmountable in court. Mthembu's network crumbled as associates turned state's witness, each revelation adding to the weight of his crimes. The case that had haunted Kruger National Park for nearly 2 decades reached its resolution, though the cost had been painfully high. In the end, Thabo Mthembu's carefully constructed empire collapsed under the weight of a family's dedication to wildlife conservation. The truth they died protecting finally emerged from the African soil, ensuring their sacrifice would lead to lasting change in the fight against wildlife crime. In October 2022, the Pretoria High Court fell silent as Judge Sarah Makona delivered her verdict. Thabo Mthembu stood motionless in the dock as 30 years of imprisonment were announced, his face betraying no emotion while the full weight of his crimes was read into record. The murders of Benjamin, Victoria, and young Jason Kelly formed only part of the indictment. The systematic slaughter of hundreds of rhinos and the corruption of Kruger National Park's conservation mission completed the devastating catalog of his offenses. The trial had gripped South Africa for weeks. Testimony from former associates revealed the intricate web of corruption that had allowed Mthembu's poaching syndicate to operate with impunity. Park rangers, customs officials, and even political figures were implicated in a network that stretched from Kruger's dusty trails to black markets across Asia. Benjamin Kelly's recovered research notes proved instrumental in securing the conviction. His meticulous documentation, preserved in waterproof containers beneath the Land Rover for 17 years, provided irrefutable evidence of Mthembu's direct involvement in both the poaching operations and the family's murder. Victoria's photographs, though damaged, corroborated every detail of Benjamin's written testimony. The impact of the case reached far beyond the courtroom. Kruger National Park underwent a complete restructuring of its management and security protocols. Every senior position was reviewed, leading to dozens of resignations and several additional arrests. The anti-poaching unit, under Mark Davidson's continued leadership, received unprecedented funding and support for advanced monitoring technology. Dr. Rachel Thompson's role in maintaining focus on the case through the years was formally recognized. Her theoretical framework, once dismissed as speculation, became the foundation for new anti-poaching strategies across African conservation areas. The patterns she had identified in the Kelly family's disappearance now helped protect other parks from similar infiltration by criminal networks. Colonel Ndaba, though retiring shortly after the trial, saw his 17-year pursuit of justice vindicated. His methodical preservation of evidence and unwillingness to let the case go cold had ultimately allowed the truth to emerge. At his retirement ceremony, he spoke not of his own persistence, but of the Kelly family's courage in facing death rather than remaining silent about what they had discovered. The international impact proved equally significant. The exposure of such deep-rooted corruption within one of Africa's premier national parks led to wholesale reviews of conservation security worldwide. New protocols for protecting research teams and whistleblowers were implemented across similar facilities globally. In 2023, Kruger National Park established the Kelly Conservation Center at Skukuza. The facility serves multiple purposes as a secure base for wildlife researchers, a training center for anti-poaching units, and a memorial to the family who gave their lives protecting Africa's wildlife. Jason's recovered field journals, displaying remarkable insight for a 14-year-old, now inspire young conservationists who visit the center. Victoria's photographs, painstakingly restored from the damaged cameras, tour international galleries alongside current images of Kruger's rhinos. The exhibition, titled Through Their Eyes, pairs her final works with the story of the family's sacrifice, raising awareness and funds for wildlife protection. The case fundamentally altered the landscape of wildlife conservation in Africa. Mthembu's conviction demonstrated that no position of authority could shield those who betrayed their conservation responsibilities. The extensive reforms implemented in Kruger became a model for other parks facing similar challenges with poaching and corruption. Perhaps most significantly, the rhino population in areas once plagued by Mthembu's operations began to recover. The systematic slaughter that had claimed hundreds of these magnificent creatures finally ended. Regular monitoring shows increasing numbers of calves in the regions where the Kelly family conducted their final research, a living testament to the importance of their sacrifice. From their final resting place in Kruger's soil, the Kelly family had ultimately achieved their mission. Their dedication to wildlife conservation, their meticulous documentation, and their unwavering commitment to truth had exposed and helped dismantle one of Africa's most damaging poaching networks. Through their tragic end, they had ensured a new beginning for the creatures they had died trying to protect.